and welcome to this episode of the Chamber Connect podcast from the Huron Chamber of Commerce. My name is Colin Carmichael. I'm the Executive Director of the Huron Chamber of Commerce and the host of this podcast. The Chamber Connect podcast is intended to give the Chamber an opportunity to share a bit about our members or other folks who are relevant to our members and who have perhaps expertise to share or just share about their business or their organization, help the Chamber get to know itself a little better, help me get to know the members a little better, and just share that with the Chamber community and beyond. And so I'm very pleased to have as my guest this week, Paul Nichol, who is the General Manager of the Community Futures Huron. Welcome to the podcast, Paul.
Oh, hello. Thanks very much, Colin, for having me on.
So why don't we just get right underway, and I'll get you to introduce yourself and tell our viewers, our listeners, a little bit about yourself and what Community Futures Huron is all about.
Oh, sure. And some of the viewers may know of us or may not. So I've certainly been around for a while. I've been with the organization since 1993. And we used to have the name Huron Business Development Corporation. And then there was a rebranding exercise in the last decade. We're part of a network of about 270 community futures development corporations across Canada. And we're only in rural areas. So the idea being that we're really a bit of a flagship program for rural economic development across Canada. So we've been now into our 32nd year of doing that in Huron County, and I've been there since the very inception.
So, what does Community Futures Huron do? I guess, and how do you I think your organization, our organization, a few others in the county kind of work in this broader economic development ecosystem. So where does Community Futures fit in that ecosystem?
Yeah, so we view ourselves foremost as an economic development agency. Some may think that we're just a lender. We certainly are a small business lender, but we don't consider that to be our main mandate. We're not a bank. We're not a credit union, but we do use our investment funds to stimulate the local economy. So that's a big part of our effort. We provide a great deal of management advice too. You don't have to be a loan client to come to us and bounce around some ideas about your business, how to start it or how to grow it. And we also firmly believe that it's not enough just to help businesses set up in the area. They have to have a great ecosystem, a great community to work in. And so we put a lot of time and effort, both on a lifestyle sort of realm, but also in an economic development round to make sure the local economy is really stimulated. I mean, a couple examples. We do things like downtown Main Street, beautification, because if you're a retailer there, that's a benefit. Another example is we work very closely with the Huron Manufacturing Association. So if the association is strong, their members are strong, that helps our local economy too. So those are things that folks maybe don't know about us so much, but it's really that three-part mandate. It's lending, it's advice, and it's also support to community economic development.
That all sounds, except for the lending part, that all sounds very, very familiar from the Chamber perspective, because I think we share that philosophy of there's the tangible things that we do for our clients or members, and but then there's that broader growing the community, growing the business community, but the broader community as well, and that a thriving business community really needs a thriving community, and vice versa. So
we have always benefited from that strong partnership angle. So and currently it's probably stronger than it's ever been in our 30 year. I mean, again, we've got many partners like the Manufacturing Association, like the County Economic Development Department, and the Chamber of Commerce, which is really becoming a great organization. If we need to roll out any business programs, we've got that infrastructure there to help support us.
Yeah, this is probably a good spot, Paul, for our full disclosure, in that I've recently joined the board of directors for Community Futures Huron, and so that synergy between our organizations is even stronger now
Well,
than it would otherwise.
I'd like to build on that, Colin, because, and that's something very important too that people need to realize. I'm not the one making decisions. I have a board of directors who are from all walks of life, all corners of Huron County, and they bring their own level of expertise to what we do. And so, frankly, Colin, bringing you on, you're the first time we've had a representative from the Chamber of Commerce. You know a whole things, and you and your organization know a whole lot of things about what's going on in the business community. And that just helps us have a better understanding and make better decisions.
Yeah. Well, I've only been to a couple of meetings at this point, but it's I mean, it's a really good group of people, obviously, but yeah, a lot of diversity there in terms of the perspectives on that board, and just the quality of questions and the deliberation around not just lending decisions, but all of those governance things around. It has been really impressive for me to see that group that obviously really cares about ensuring that Huron County has a stable and reliable source of, again, not just the funding, but the other support that Community Futures brings.
There's an unwritten rule or creed in the Community Futures world that you I don't want to offend anyone in the chamber membership, but that you never want to have a banker on your board, because we are, and you've seen it, when we look at a loan application, anything that the bank looks at, we kind of throw out the window, and we go for deeper things, like what's the character of the individual, and how much sweat do they have in the game, and do they understand their market? So it's a very different sort of decision-making process for loans. And and to that end, and we don't mind the terminology, but so we lend to people that no one else will lend to. And that's only because we have an understanding and we have a knowledge of the local market, that we can see where opportunity lies, and we can see where something can work, where perhaps another organization wouldn't see that.
Yeah. But also not necessarily always a lender of last resort either, right? I mean,
so we partner with the banks, with the credit unions, with Business Development Bank. So yeah, we're often not the only lender, but we sometimes fill in that little piece, that little piece of Jello that has to fit in to make the whole thing work.
So maybe walk us through, from one of your clients, and use a lending client just because that's kind of the core of it. But and obviously, you can't talk about specific clients, but the types of businesses that Community Futures supports, or what a Community Futures loan has allowed some businesses to do that they couldn't otherwise do. Just some general examples of the kinds of things that we're talking about here.
Yeah, I mean, we have. Currently we have a little over 100 loan clients in our portfolio, and we've probably had 10 times that if you look at the history of the organization. Our loan portfolio has a certain profile. You'll see a lot of startups. So probably a good third of our clientele are startups, and that's just the nature of financing. Banks will not, they won't go near a startup. They're typically not comfortable until there's at least 3 years of a track record. So there, and then the obvious ones around those that are expanding and see an opportunity. So that's how that splits out. In terms of sectors, there's really hardly a sector that we don't touch. We do some in agriculture. We do some in manufacturing. We do a whole lot of retail and service as well. We particularly like to support businesses that are driving a tourism economy, because that's always, that's been a real opportunity, a real boom, frankly, in tourism in Huron County in the last decade or so. So, and the other one we get, which we love doing, it's very risky, but is a new idea, a new product, a new service, a new technology. And we know darn well when we're making a loan like that, it could be hit or miss. Either the product may take off or it may not. And lots of time, I mean, sometimes it doesn't, but I think, speaking historically, we've never regretted doing those types of loans. And I could quote you some, today, but that would be breaking confidentiality. But there are businesses out there doing mind-blowing things, serving different parts of the Canadian and international economies. And we're proud to say we were there first. We believed in them, even though they couldn't show us there may be a market for the product. We believed in them because we knew we could see the drive, we could see the connections and networks they had. So,
Yeah.
It's from a lending point of view, it's a very exciting space to be in, because you do see the types of things you maybe wouldn't see elsewhere.
And as a local, I mean, you're part of a national network of organizations, not unlike Chambers, actually, in
Yes,
a sense.
yes,
but the decision making is local, and so, as you said, Community Futures has that that local knowledge of what might be successful in Huron County that someone in a tower in Toronto might not see, right? And
sure.
and those kinds of things. And maybe I assume you've been doing this for 30 years, you said, or something, but even maybe not going quite that far back, but how has the business I guess changed in recent years? And I think it seems that COVID is kind of that benchmark. Everything, there's pre-COVID and post-COVID, and there was so much disruption, right, to business. And I'm sure it had an impact on all of your clients during that period. But yeah, maybe talk about some of the changes in what you're seeing in terms of people who are coming to Community Futures, or that kind of thing.
Yeah, bearing in mind that we're now lending to the children of people we lent to years ago. So that's exciting too. Like that is pretty exciting. And unless you were rooted in the community, that wouldn't mean anything to you, right? But it does. But I think in general, the applicants coming to us are far more savvy than they were, say, 20 years ago. And I'm not saying that business is harder than it used to be, but certainly the quality of the business plans and the savvy of those entrepreneurs has really expanded over the last few decades. And that's been evident, both in the quality of applications, but also the success rate of those businesses as well. So, that's certainly a case. The other, other things like, again, I spoke to the innovation aspect, and we would talk for years about innovation, and we would talk for years about things like value-added processing, and it didn't happen. Just saying it was an opportunity didn't happen. And it's taken a while for that to really catch on, but now we're seeing it regularly, these applications coming in for a new product or for value-added processing. The other one, which I do humbly tell the story. I remember starting out with Community Futures and looking at the nature of the local economy, and I said, I publicly said on a number of occasions, manufacturing has no future in Huron County. I looked at it, I said, no, everything's being put offshore. They can't compete on a price basis. The days of manufacturing in Huron County are dead. That was 30 years ago. Boy, was I wrong. I mean, we have a very thriving, healthy manufacturing sector. And so, you learn from your mistakes too, right? So.
So that's maybe a good segue to talk about the last few months. And speaking of, I mean, I talked about the turmoil that COVID brought, but we have a whole new set
Yeah.
of turmoil, courtesy of President Trump and the quote unquote trade war with the United States, and the uncertainty that has brought, if not direct impacts. Certainly the what I hear from my members is that I mean, basically everyone is impacted, even if it's not directly, right? And so some of our manufacturers have been fortunate enough that their supply chains and their export markets are protected under CUSMA so far, so they're not directly impacted by the tariffs, but that could change tomorrow. Who knows? And so that uncertainty has really led to a chilling effect across not just the manufacturing sector, but it trickles out into real estate, into hospitality, into retail, because big purchases and small ones. You said people who had jobs that seemed secure 6 months ago suddenly don't seem so secure, because you don't know what's coming next month from Washington D.C. and so maybe you're not going out to eat as often. Those kinds of things that impact the overall economy. So from your perspective, then with your clients and other what you see in the economy, maybe just talk a bit about what you've seen over the last few months.
Yeah, the real villain here is uncertainty. And boy, did we ever see it in the late fall and winter months when everything stopped, and we were working with clients on developments, and suddenly, nope, everybody stopped, backed off. We had some current clients that needed to pivot, find different supply chains. And the one that was really hit hard was the housing sector. I mean, we don't engage much in the housing development community, but we have a lot of support services, and those, again, the housing projects came to a grinding halt, and that affected them as well. But I think reflecting, going back, the term is maybe overused a bit, but resiliency. And I go back to the COVID days. We did millions of dollars of relief loans during COVID, and like 92% of those businesses survived. So that that tells me now maybe that's a bit about the relief loan, but it's also about the individual, the entrepreneur, not getting burnt out, sticking to it, basically having the grit to keep going on. And so we've seen a lot of that. We've seen a lot of grit in the last couple of months where things have calmed down. Our activity's gone way up again, and I think people have said that uncertainty right now is just the reality, but we got to get on with life and do this development, do this work, do what it was we want to do for a living, and carry on.
Yeah, I was talking to a manufacturer not too long ago who said that basically they and their suppliers and clients, their ecosystem, have to just operate business as usual for now. They don't have any other choice, because they can't predict what's coming, and so you have to just kind of go with what but unfortunately what that means is that any kind of strategic plans or 3 or 5 year plans are kind of sitting on a shelf right now, because you can't, a long-term plan at this point is a couple months, because you don't know what's we're CUSMA, the CUSMA renegotiation. We don't know what that's going to look like, and particularly in agriculture, we don't know what the impact is going to be on agriculture. And of course, that's such a huge impact on Huron County's economy, even for the businesses that aren't directly involved in that. And so it's just a really difficult time for businesses to plan. But maybe and we've talked about this before, Paul, and you were on a panel a few months ago talking about this kind of stuff when the through the Huron Economic Response Task Force, when we talked about at the beginning of all of this tariff stuff, about what businesses can do now to prepare for what might or might not be coming. So, I don't know if you want to take a few minutes from your perspective of, kind of what you shared then, but which I think, there's a lot of water under the bridge since we did that
There is.
panel discussion, but I think we're in a way still in that period where our members and our clients and businesses in Huron County, there are things we can do, even if we're in a bit of a wait and see, business as usual ish kind of period. There are steps I think that folks can take to be prepared for whatever comes in the next few months. So I don't know if you want to share some of your thoughts on that.
Oh, yeah, for sure, Colin. I think it comes down to a very simple homily, and that is it's about sharp pencils and really having a good handle on, well, having a good handle on your cash flow, but also anticipating when you might have the need. So, for example, we do from time to time do cash flow needs, cash flow loans, for that sort of thing. But taking it back to our current reality on our board, it's taking a lot longer for clients to process loan applications. We're always kind of proud, like we can do a turnaround, and sometimes, well, once everything's together for a loan application, we can do it in a day, or we can do it in 2 weeks, or at the greatest, we can do it in under a month that you'll have a decision. But for those entrepreneurs to get to that stage, they're cautious, they keep going back, they keep working at it, because there is a lot more risk to assess. And it's like, well, what if this happens? What if this happens? So there's a lot of pencils being sharpened out there right now. And we'll applaud them, obviously, because the last thing we want to do is support somebody that's going into a venture that even they're not sure is going to work. So, and that has definitely been an outcome within the last 6 months. It's gotten the decision making from an entrepreneur's point of view has gotten that much harder, which means then it takes longer for us to get to a point where we're willing to back them.
Mm-hmm. So what advice then would you give to perhaps an entrepreneur or an established business? Well, I guess that's still an entrepreneur, but who perhaps hadn't considered community futures before, perhaps didn't even know what you were about, and they've got light bulbs going off or whatever it is, and so how do they start the process with you? How do they get in touch? What do they need to think about ahead of time? And I mean, I'm sure you coach them through all of that, but maybe just talk a bit about that process and how someone gets started.
Yeah, it's again, first of all, there's no charge to our services on the management counseling side. That just, we talk through the idea with folks, give them some tips, give them some realistic criticism too. But basically our job, at least in my opinion, our job is to look at somebody that has an idea, and our job is to help them through, how do we make this work? How do we make this work? And that's as easy as our website, cfhuron.ca, to get started, or often folks will just give me a call, and that's how the conversation gets started. So it's really it's the other thing I want to point out is for entrepreneurs, and particularly not just startups, but don't be discouraged when you get turned down. Because almost everybody that comes to us for a loan has been turned down by somebody. So don't get discouraged, because that is why we're here. And just because you were turned down by somebody, that doesn't mean you don't have a good idea. So, so I want to really emphasize that as well. Perhaps there are good ideas and bad ideas, but we go into it with the attitude that if we can help you make this work, that's what we're here for.
Right. Yeah. Well, that's it's so valuable to have that resource in Huron County and in rural areas across the country. But Of course, we're particularly concerned with Huron County ourselves, and it's like I said, I've in the last few months have seen under the hood a little bit as being on the board, but and I think it's probably for at least for some folks a resource that's been underused, and that perhaps they weren't even aware was available. So hopefully through well, hopefully through this episode of the podcast and other ways that that we can spread the news about Community Futures Huron and what you do, that that we can ensure that anyone who needs kind of the help that you provide can access it. I don't know if there's anything else that you wanted to share.
I do. I have sort of a parting comment or tip, and that is I encourage people to think about the existing businesses in our community now, because I don't know, somewhere around a third of them, the owners are going to be retiring in the next few years.
Mm-hmm.
And, it's a bit of a tragedy if those businesses don't carry on. The other way of looking at it is an opportunity. And maybe you never thought you'd, want to run a sporting goods store, or maybe you never thought you would want to run a bookstore, or what. So we're starting to see things like employee buyouts, which is really encouraging, but we are very concerned about the number of business owners that's going to retire, and we would, we're really putting emphasis now on finding ways to help that transition from a retiring business owner to a new owner. So
Mm-hmm.
I put that out there, and especially if any of your viewers are at that stage where they are thinking of handing the keys over, please do come out and speak to us, because we're starting to develop some good expertise around how to make that transition happen.
For that succession planning, and because you're right, you lose, if you have retirement, business close, empty storefront, to then start again with something in that space takes a lot. You lose that momentum, whereas if it's possible to continue that momentum with a new owner, that's much more likely to be successful, I would think.
Yeah, and I don't need to name any names because it's well known, but there have been some announcements in the last few months, and you go, wow, I can't imagine this community without that business there.
Yeah.
So we're going to see more of it. So
yeah.
let's do our best to to pull through that.
Yeah, and I think that there are folks out there who may have that untapped talent to run a business like that, whatever business it is, and who maybe haven't ever considered themselves an owner, but as you said, employee buyouts or other, there are folks who have developed 30 years of experience in retail, for example, or hospitality, or whatever it is, and may have never seen themselves as an owner, and maybe have never just been given that nudge or thought that it was even possible to get the capital required to do that or whatever. So yeah, it's that's a good point to look at. Those businesses that are, where the owners are reaching the end of their time as owners, and
happens to us all eventually, Colin.
Well, exactly. Everyone deserves a nice retirement, and I know. I mean, it's funny when we talk about personalities in terms of entrepreneurs and business owners, and they tend to be the types that just keep going, and but that doesn't always match with quality of life and that kind of thing. So there's always a retirement point at some point, whether it's voluntary or involuntary. But anyway, so I think that's a great thing for folks to think about, is if they've never, even if they've seen themselves as an owner, had that moment where they say, well, I could do that, but didn't think it was possible, that it might indeed be possible. And Community Futures is exactly the type of organization that can see that potential in ways that other lenders might not. That kind of thing. So good. Well, thanks so much, Paul, for being my guest this week on the podcast.
Colin. Thanks for the opportunity.
Yeah, it's always good to chat with you, and I look forward to bumping into you at
the next board meeting.
Yes, we do have a board meeting coming up, and of course there are a whole slew of chamber events coming up that I'm sure we'll see you and others from Community Futures at as well. And in case I don't think I mentioned off the top, but Community Futures Huron is a member of the Huron Chamber of Commerce, and you guys have, you've been great supporters of the chamber, and we always appreciate that. So thanks again, Paul, and we will see you soon.
Good one.